Okay. Good morning. Good morning, dear friends, and welcome to our spiritual home, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tarpon Springs. My name is Betty Lou Cummins, and I serve on the Board of Trustees and today as your worship associate. We are so glad to offer a warm welcome to the guests who are with us today. Our mission statement asserts that we are a liberal community for all ages, promoting spiritual growth, social justice, and the arts. Today we're delighted to have our minister, the Reverend Kristina Spaude, leading our service and speaking on the subject, Change is Life. We would really like to get to know you better and hope that you will join us following the service for coffee so that we can do that. And I understand there may be Barbara's brownies and some cookies to go with that coffee. Okay? We are a busy church, and everyone is invited to attend any of our activities, whether you are a member or not. To see the details of our events, you can see the church calendar on our website, uutarpon.org. Or you can talk to any of us after the service. We are a church without a creed, but instead a covenant to which we concur. Our covenant reads that we strive to look for the best and encourage the best in each other as we move toward justice, peace, and love for both ourselves and the world. And when we fall short, we will seek understanding, reconciliation, and a return to covenant. We believe that we need not think alike to love alike. We welcome all thoughtful people to journey through life's mystery with us, whatever your religious background or current belief, whatever your race, ethnicity, sexual or gender identity, lifestyle, or circumstance. With us, may you walk the way of holiness and happiness, justice and peace, and service. And through your time in our presence, may you feel the blessings of love. As a congregation, we seek to create a diverse and accepting community based on the principles of our faith, Unitarian Universalism, bound together as we are in voluntary loyalty. And now let us come to the silence and this moment.
Our opening music is number 1015 in this teal book, I Know I Can. And if you feel like standing as you sing, please do.
When we introduce ourselves, it is helpful for those with vision loss and others to say some things about ourselves. So I am the Reverend Kristina Spaude. I use she, her pronouns and am a white woman. I have chin-length curly brown hair, parted on one side with blue eyes. And here at the church, we want to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Tocobaga and Seminole peoples. Our opening words this morning come from Arlen Goff. This is Thresholds. Thresholds, we cross them every day, from room to room, outside to inside, back again. From here to there, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age. Each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation from what we were and what we are to what we can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to the other, to the sacred, to the holy, into an awareness of new life, pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, you longing, thirsty souls. Come, let us worship together.
Please forgive me, I haven't practiced with this device. Okay. Push it in. There you go. Hold it. Push it and hold it. Forward. Yep. That. Okay. Hey. Miracle. Not that way. We light the chalice with these words by Eva Cheskava. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action.
Before we get to our story this morning, I have an extra volunteer appreciation today. It is with deep joy and gratitude I share that on Thursday, I was informed that I was welcomed into full fellowship by the Ministerial Fellowship Committee of the UUA. Thank you. This is a bit akin to getting tenure and the last major milestone our faith recognizes in formation and service before retirement or death.
That's it. That's all they wrote.
I entered seminary 10 and a half years ago. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're all getting gifts today. I entered seminary 10 and a half years ago and was ordained 4.5 years ago. My path has not been either easy or straightforward. I have been evaluated constantly by multiple parties, including professors as individuals and as teams, my teaching pastor, multiple UU church boards, formation committees at my teaching congregation, and later the congregation I was affiliated with, the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, and before that, the Regional Subcommittee on Candidacy, peers in chaplaincy training, and later the hospital where I worked, my chaplain supervisor, interdisciplinary teams at the hospital, my supervisors at the hospital, and then the boards and transition teams of this congregation for 2 years, along with meeting with a mentor monthly for 3 years. I think that's it. Being granted full fellowship means that I don't need to continue with this extensive evaluation process anymore, that I have met their obviously high standards and expectations for ministers. It also means that I am eligible to supervise and intern and could pursue the few roles still only allowed to ministers in full fellowship. It means that I have done good work and have the skills and knowledge to continue my own formation. Indeed. And while this celebration is in many ways my own, it also very much is not. It would not be possible without the hundreds of people I have served and who have supported me through this process. Today's extra special volunteer appreciation goes to the members of this congregation who have served on the transition team over the last 2 years. We met monthly, reviewed my work and what was going on in the congregation to support both me and the congregation into our work together. The transition team was also one of the groups that submitted annual evaluations for me as I moved through preliminary fellowship, now into full fellowship. They would arrive with their thoughts and questions, offering their insightful and heartfelt feedback, both kind and challenging, with clarity, vulnerability, and transparency. It was a joy to work and grow with them. For 2 years, I was faithfully companioned by Greg Rosasco, Judy Lucarelli, and Barbara Mellon. For the first year, I had the privilege of being supported also by Mark Hopkins and Pat Donahue, and for the second, we were joined by Jane Neal and the Reverend Kathy Schmitz. For your care for me, and especially for this congregation, for continuing on in spite of the paperwork component, for all the ways you exemplify all the best of lay ministry. Thank you. And for each of you, I have a gift. The gift that I have been giving is jam. It's If you hate the flavors, see me later. I have others that you can try. Great. And on to our story. Our story today is titled A Single Pearl by Donna Jo Napoli and illustrated by Jim LaMarche. A grain of sand fell into the ocean past so many creatures to the very bottom, where sand went out in every direction for what seemed like forever to the grain of sand. The ocean bed is huge and important, said the grain of sand. In comparison, I don't matter at all. I am worthless. The grain of sand would have cried if sand could make tears. A hungry oyster drew water through its gills, stirring up the ocean bed, filtering out its food from the floating seaweed. The grain of sand got stuck between the oyster's mantle and shell and struggled at first to get free. Then it gave up the struggle, for, after all, what did it matter? It was only a single grain of sand. The grain of sand would have curled in despair if sand could curl. But that single grain of sand in that very spot irritated the poor oyster, who protected itself by coating the sand with a shiny layer year after year. The grain of sand felt more and more alone and lost. One day, a daring diver put on a nose clip and finger guards and climbed onto a weighted bar so his friend could lower him into the cold sea. He dug up the oyster and put it into his net basket. When the diver got back onto land, he pried open the shell and gasped at the glorious pearl. He quickly put it in his pocket. The grain of sand was overcome by all the rapid changes, from the inside of the cold oyster to out in the hot sun to deep in the dark pocket. The grain of sand would have shivered with dread if sand could shiver. The diver sold the pearl to a prince for bags and bags of money. The prince, in turn, gave it to his beloved wife, who said it glowed like the moon. She saved it on a slip of velvet in a golden cup until she had a daughter whose laughter was as light and whose face was as lovely as the moon. For the third time, the pearl changed hands. The young princess hung it around her neck and held it tenderly. The grain of sand felt her warmth and love. This was where it was supposed to be. This was home. The grain of sand laughed in joy, for anyone can laugh. It was so admired that pearls became the imperial jewel of choice in all Persia. The grain of sand sat in the center of the pearl, and it mattered. We will now sing our children and youth to their programming with Jami, and we will kindle this flame to send our light and love from this community with them.
We come now to the time in our service when we give our offering for the good of the church. We are an independent congregation and we must sustain ourselves financially. You may place your offering in the plates as they come around, or you can send a check into our building at 57 Reed Street, Tarpon Springs, Florida, 34689. You can also go on our website, uutarpon.org, and hit the donate button. This is also the time if you're visiting, you'd like to put your information in so we can contact you. There's a longer slip in the back of the pew in front of you that you can fill out as a visitor. Or if you have a joy or concern you would like us to read after the service, there's a smaller slip, you can fill that out as well. Okay, thank you.
Before our readings, we will hold a brief moment of silence to let you settle into yourselves, settle into your seat. Might take a few deep breaths deep into your belly. Okay, everyone here who just got leaves, hold on to them. Instructions will be forthcoming. Our readings for today, there are two of them. The first is from Manish Mishra Marzetti, Nothing is Static. The ground shifts, sometimes slowly, sometimes like an earthquake, reminding us that the solidity we often love and seek is an illusion. The crumbling dust of the desert plains, the moist fertility of farmlands, the eroding coastline of tidal shores, all are changing. Committees dissolve or are created. Leaders retire or step away. Ministers come and go. Bylaws are amended. New experiences lead to new truths which foster evolution. The natural course of life always pushing us toward greater understandings of what it means to be human. Everything about our existence points toward change, flexibility, and dynamic recreation. And it's hard because change involves loss. Can we hold the losses well while not holding ourselves back? The ground shifts, sometimes slowly, sometimes like an earthquake. Nothing is static. And the second reading comes from Elizabeth Tarbuck's. This is All is Dukkha. Dukkha, they say. The Buddhists say all is dukkha. It is hard to translate, they tell us. It means literally suffering, but the feeling of dukkha is closer to impermanence. The fact of impermanence is central to the Buddhist path of nirvana, enlightenment. Dukkha, all is impermanence. Nothing lasts. I thought of that yesterday, watching leaves come down in a shower and the smell of the rotting ones going back into the earth. Leaf to humus and back to earth to nourish the roots of the mother tree. The crows crying as the leaves fall and their nests are exposed. Dukkha, all is impermanence. And life goes on, and people who were with us last year at this time have died. All souls pass on. All is dukkha. Nothing lasts. The path to enlightenment is understanding, accepting impermanence to the point where we no longer struggle against it. That is the way of the Buddha. But here in the West, we search for that which is permanent, even as we live with the death of all things, all people. We search for a sure footing on the path strewn with fallen leaves. We notice the buds of next year's growth, tight curled and waiting. We hold on to the things we can count on: our church, our community, our memories of those who died before us, our love and hope, and the search for certainty in a world that is dukkha. God of creation, God of today, let us find each other in a changing world. Let us experience love as something which exists, a possibility which is. Let us know that we are alive and being renewed miraculously each second, that the impermanence gives to life its freshness and surprise, that our memories of yesterday and our expectations of tomorrow make now a cherished, precious, eternal moment.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe in,
I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe out peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Paisley was what I decided to name my first cat. Not the first cat who chose me, but the first one I adopted. Paisley. I'd spent several days searching through baby name lists and considering scores of possibilities. Nothing seemed quite right until I was washing dishes one morning just before I was heading out the door for work. Paisley, I said to her, as she looked at me with her big green eyes that never missed one single thing when it came to me. And she looked at me in recognition. I guess this isn't the normal way cats get names, as I found out from the rescue folks I work with earlier this year when I adopted another kitten. They don't reveal themselves to you. But that was our way, Paisley and I, who shared a wordless, profound, and instinctual connection. Early this year, I sent my love to her final sleep. It was, as we say in rescue, the last best act of love I could give her. And despite the many hardships I've experienced in life, was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. Apart from the strong connection we shared, we had other stories and secrets, things for which there are no known words, only the gentle recognition and wonder at the synchronicity of the universe. Like the way I had unknowingly named my precious feline familiar after the town my maternal grandmother, Helen, with whom I also shared a deep connection, where she had been born 88 years before, across the Atlantic, in a country she left at the age of 5, but whose strength and character flow through my own veins as they did hers, and dance in recognition every time I hear bagpipes. Paisley coming into my life was one of those events that marks a life. I had just come out of a relationship that devastated me. A friend and coworker encouraged me to get a cat, and I recognized the wisdom immediately of having a life in my life to take care of. She chose me, and she saved me. Our relationship has always been wrapped lovingly in mystery. Mystery is not always loving and straightforward. We often do not know the ways we impact others, or sometimes how others impact us, or how our lives become intertwined serendipitously. And still, this is part of the magic of being alive. I remember one night I was working at the hospital, and one of the traumas we got in was a fall. The woman had become paralyzed, and her niece was called as the next of kin. The pastor had been called too, and I had met him and the niece in the waiting room. The pastor was a man about 60, I thought. His delight to get to talk with a chaplain as he was working his way through school was striking to me, as that was not always the reception I got in the rural and conservative area where I worked. Some months later, we got in a really serious trauma. An older man and his wife had been headed to Red Lobster for dinner, and he started having a bad pain in his chest and abdomen. A bit later, in comes the pastor from the previous trauma. He's the son of this man. He confided he was not enjoying being on the receiving end of care as much as having given it, although he and his family, more than a dozen of them eventually on that long night, did appreciate it. His father died later in surgery. Some months after that, one evening, we had a code. When I got to the floor, I realized it was again the same man, the pastor's son, who had been admitted to the hospital for his own serious but brief illness. He wasn't able to be resuscitated. I was again providing care for this family who didn't recognize me or know how my story had intersected with their husband, son, father, uncles several times. Mystery gives way to uncertainty, that serendipity of life. As meaning-seeking, meaning-making, storytelling people, the uncertainty and serendipity can be a joy, a comfort, an illusion, an anxiety, a reminder that we are held tenderly and inexplicably by that which is greater than we are, in an interconnected and interdependent world that stretches beyond our understanding in all ways. Science fiction author Octavia Butler wrote in her book, Parable of the Sower, that all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Because we live in this moment, in this world, and in a Euro-dominant culture, we probably mostly think of the web physically, stretching almost like roadways and waterways or a spider web across the land, connecting people and creatures and all things. But the web also extends temporally, including in it all the past along with all the present and even into the future. It extends through the sacred spaces between us and includes the pull toward the good, the next best thing, or the next right thing, or the next better thing. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. There is nothing beyond change. Everything is always changing. Even our sense of self and selfhood, even if we don't believe we have changed or grown in character or otherwise, our bodies are constantly changing as its own organism, as new cells are created and die every day. We often look outside of ourselves to nature for a sense of the permanent, but nature is constantly changing herself. There is no escaping change. Ultimately, it will outlast us and outlive us, and will have its way. Did you know that the Appalachian Mountains were born some 480 million years ago, thrust through the surface of the supercontinent Pangaea, creating ranges with elevations similar to the Rockies and the Alps today? And that the Appalachian Range spreads not only across a chunk of the eastern United States into part of Canada, but has also split across the world as part of Greenland, Iceland, Scotland, England, Norway, and Western Africa, from Morocco south just about to Ghana. Life's scale of time and change are beyond what any of us can comprehend, and also so fundamental to what it means to be. Death is an extreme example of the ways changes in our lives inherently include losses. We experience them all the time: moves, job changes, retirement, quitting retirement. I know some of you have done that. Relationship changes, raising children, them growing up, aging, going to school, graduating. All of it, good, bad, or otherwise, all involve loss with a change. Even decisions like my own to leave Pennsylvania and accept a contract ministry here with this congregation involved losses for me, a choice I made freely and happily. But the change itself is often hard on our neural wirings, along with our heartstrings and sometimes our purse strings. All of those can be factors in resisting change. Recognizing this is all part of what it means to be human. While we may lean in or at least relent, we often struggle against it. We resist. Mostly this comes from a place of fear. We don't know what will happen. We don't know how things will be. We have doubts about our decision-making or the promises made to us. Our ground is shifting constantly beneath us, the rug pulled out, and we have nothing to hold on to but ourselves. And will that be enough? Often we become angry as a way to feel powerful and to have a sense of control, when the only way we can really achieve either of those, a sense of power or control, is by addressing ourselves, our needs or wants or hopes or fears or sadnesses or losses. And to make things more complicated, we are often having all of these thoughts and feelings at the same time. The world changes around us and we change too, and it can be easy to get lost in all of it, like the grain of sand that gets shuffled about, sometimes against their will, into new, uncomfortable, and sometimes disappointing environments. We may feel ourselves rudderless, anchorless, pulled by change or fate's random whim. Some might think of true north or the North Star as a way of orienting ourselves through our journeys. These are wonderful external ways of finding our way forward. Or maybe we might think of an anchor, which holds us safe but still allows us to move, as a kind of internal and external mode of keeping oriented. There's another that I've been thinking about these last couple of weeks. As part of the Wellspring program, a kind of focused and education-driven covenant group that I have been participating in this year, I started reading the book Heartwood the art of living with the end in mind. The content, the way that life and death are inextricably woven and bound together, is a favorite subject of mine, but I'd not heard of heartwood before. Heartwood is the wood usually in the center of a tree trunk or even in branches that was once active in the living of the tree, moving nutrients, water, sap, and things around to help the tree survive and grow. Over time, as the tree does grow, rings are added to the outside. Eventually, the wood in the center stops functioning as conduit for active living, and the cells die because they aren't needed for that purpose. But as the trees grow, it has a greater need for structural support. It has a need for a strong core to hold it upright. And as the cells in the center of these rings die, they begin to receive and store compounds from other parts of the tree that help make it more resistant to attacks from insects and organisms that cause decay. People are pretty similar to this. As we grow and change, many of us start adding layers to our identities and personhood. Some are core to who we are, and those particular parts of our identities emerge and are marked clearly in our minds as in our actions. I've long talked about the way that when my grandmother Helen died, she came to live more fully in my heart. Now with this understanding of heartwood, I think of the ways that she has become part of my heartwood, my center, helping keep me strong and able to keep growing, whatever the circumstances and changes that are happening. Many others live in the heartwood of my life too. Heartwood is an internal orientation of core strength and self. Maybe our heartwood is where all of the dukkha, the impermanence of life that we experience, can continue to live and be part of us as we grow and change. Change doesn't mean that something or someone must be lost, just that our relationship with people or things is different than it was before. This last week was Halloween, or All Hallows Eve, or Samhain, All Saints' Day, and All Souls' Day. Each intended for distinct purposes, they also share the truth that people around the world feel around this time of year, that the veil between the land of the living and the land of the dead is thin, and crossing over between the two is not only possible, but likely. In some cultures, food and other offerings are even set out for the departed to enjoy during their visits. 4 weeks ago, we did a writing ritual as part of the service, and today I am asking you to do a similar exercise. If you are in the building, you may have noticed the bulletin board in the social hall, which is where we are reworking a communal art project. The raindrops and clouds from water communion have been added, as have pieces from the foam board coloring project we started last week. We will be adding hands as part of our stewardship campaign to mark pledges that have been turned in, and today we are doing the last piece. Each of you here in the building should have received a leaf and something to write with. If you are joining us via Zoom, my ask is that you write what you want to respond with in the chat, to send me an email, or to speak out loud your response when you're able to after the service is over, when you can chat together. If you are here in the building and writing is hard for you, you can ask a neighbor, or I would be happy to help you during coffee hour. On your leaf, and if you haven't gotten one, Barbara will bring you one as well as a writing implement. I'd like you to write the name or names of some of the people, which includes your pet familiars, who have loved you into being, those who are part of your heartwood. My grandmother taught me about ministry and social justice long before I knew what either of those meant, so her name would be there. Also, Bob Erdman, who generously took me under his wing when I was new to Unitarian Universalism and learning to be a lay leader, and many others. We will be collecting these to add to our bulletin board. And while you are writing, Bonnie is going to play our closing hymn a couple of times through.
Either way.
I'm just in time for the sermon. You have earplugs, so
a blessing for us and for the leaves and the names that we have collected so far. These words are from Stephen Charleston, retired Episcopal bishop and elder of the Choctaw Nation. Long ago, my people practiced communal burial. We thought it would be a lonely thing to bury a person alone, so we gathered the bones of our loved ones and buried them together. In this way, the bonds of love were unbroken. A person was never outside community. We were born in community, lived in community, and not even death could remove us from our community. Family was the strength of the people, the sacred way of life. Kinship continued forever. This time of year, I always remember that. Those we love have never been lost to us. They are here now, living their lives in a new way. The bonds of love are unbroken. Each time I lead worship, I close with these words from Jean Harrison Newyar in The Gift of Faith. In the lore of ancient China, there's a story of a philosopher who was asked, "Where is the road called hope?" He replied, "It does not exist, but as people move upon it, it comes into being." I invite you to continue moving forward on this path, this journey called hope with me.
We extinguish the chalice of our living tradition now. May its light and warmth continue to accompany us until we are together again.